Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show. Meet the trusted experts who will give you straight answers and will help guide you on the path of later life care. Now, here's your host, founder, caregiver, and CEO, Suzanne Newman.
And welcome everyone to Answers for Elders Radio Network. And we are so proud today to basically talk about the vitality revolution. And the month of July, we are kicking off. We first started in June about physical and emotional wellness. And this is a program throughout the summer that we're going to be talking about ways in which we can center ourselves and live a higher quality of life. And we're kicking off this month to our second set of wellness principles, and that is occupational and social wellness. Now, when you think about occupational and social wellness, people go, what? Does it mean a job? Does it mean that I have to, go meet people or anything like that? That's not really what those principles are. Occupational wellness has to do with a sense of purpose every day. It's a reason to get up every morning. It's about finding things that you're working towards or accomplishing, that feeling of accomplishment in your life. And of course, social wellness has to do with connections. It has to do with relationships, the qualities of your relationships, how you're communicating, the different things like that. And most importantly, I will tell you, is what are you saying to yourself? How are you connecting with yourself? What are the things that you may be doing unconsciously that might be sabotaging your life? And we are here with an amazing coach. And I'm so excited to have Laurie Hardy with us. And Laurie has spent 20 years in broadcast, and she is also a coach. She is a certified life coach and spiritual director, and she is amazing. And I've had the opportunity to be involved in her amazing podcast, and we're going to talk about this. So welcome to Answers for Elders, Laurie Hardy.
Thank you for having me.
I hope that I did it justice on the whole principle of occupational and social wellness, Laurie. Did I get that right?
Yes. In fact, it's so important. And I love what you said about self-talk, because what I'm running into in the interviews that I'm doing with people whose lives have been interrupted so often by caretaking is guilt. And when we look at what we're telling ourselves, and you went through that. So I think really for you to kind of share what it was like for you, the self-talk, and then how you realized that was getting in your way. Can you talk about that? Because I feel
absolutely, Laurie. And of course, I kind of throw my whole life out on my show. So, but I was a horrible daughter to my mother. And the main reason why I was a horrible daughter to my mother was because she, betrayed me when I was 22 years old through a situation where I felt she should have been there for me and she wasn't. And as much as she tried to justify her reasons, she never was sincere in her apology. And so it just created this angst for decades, literally, until I was at the point where I was able to forgive her. And because we were kind of stuck together in the end of her life. But in the meantime, I felt so much guilt once we tried, we healed that angst between us. So then I turned into the caregiver that had to go above and beyond because I felt guilty that I had hurt her all those years. And so now I was trying to make up for it. And I know that was the motivator. And even though I loved her dearly, she was an amazing human being. And now I appreciate all the great things that she was. I wasn't able to see that when I was younger. What I saw before was this, you hurt me. You were not, all this story, that's the drum that I kept banging. And all it really did was it hurt myself. I was doing it to myself. And so that's why we talk about the self-talk. What are you doing? How are you communicating with yourself? And so I was very fortunate. Mom and I had a great counselor that we worked with, the two of us. The counselor said, what your daughter really needs to hear is a profound apology. And my mom just kind of looked at me. Well, I said I was sorry. And it's like, no, you didn't. She didn't hear you. And so I think one of the things that we've learned through this is how are we operating? What is the stories we're telling ourselves? Because on her end, she had her story, and on my end, I had my story. And so I'm sure you work with people like that all the time.
I also train people to become recovery coaches. And this is what we run into. Somebody will say, I'm sorry, but, and that doesn't qualify. It doesn't qualify.
No.
If you can let go of the big but, you're going to get a lot farther.
Yeah.
And, the thing about guilt is when we caretake out of guilt, we are not good caretakers. We don't make people feel loved and cared for. We're doing it out of responsibility. And so I love that you got to a point with counseling where you could let go of that. That's where the self-talk and self-care comes into, because when we take care of our loved one out of guilt and we don't take care of ourselves, it's never good. It's not going to end well. And so when we can intervene and get the help we need to get a break, to be able to still have what you were talking about, occupational therapy, we have to have another purpose other than caretaking.
Right. And that's the thing. I think that a lot of people, they get so, especially family caregivers, and I will say the worst are spouses. Spouses feel like they have to give 150% and they're not allowed to have any joy in their life or anything positive because they're taking care of their loved one. And I see it all the time. And you and I have discussed this before, haven't we?
Yeah. In fact, what I wonder is when we're taking care of an elder, we're expecting them to be dying soon. When we're taking care of a spouse, it seems like people expect to get back to normal, and that's not necessarily what's going to happen. So there's a denial there. Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. And Laurie, there's a lot of denial and there's a lot of guilt about when we have those feelings of when you're saying, my mom or dad will probably pass away soon. And I've talked to people that feel guilty because their family, their loved one is suffering so dearly. They're thinking, it's okay to let go. It's, I just wish they die, because not that they wanted to lose them, but because they felt the angst of the horrible trauma and suffering that they were dealing with on a regular basis. And I think that's one of the things that we see a lot with family caregivers. We also see it with seniors that are taking care of their spouses, and they forget their own lives. And there are consequences if you do that. And that's the thing that I think we want to talk about today, is how to keep that balance in your life, how to find purpose, even when you're in the storm of caregiving, because it is absolutely important. Laurie, what do you want to add anything to that at this point?
One thing you did was you got a counselor, which I think was brilliant. Also, get a coach, because often what happens, this is what I'm discovering, is if you talk about it, you recognize it, and then you know what to do.
Absolutely.
For instance, this one gentleman who was caretaking his wife, she had a form of asthma from long COVID. She had to have hot coffee at a certain time. So he would go out to write his book, and then the guilt would set in. And he didn't understand, but when he talked about it, he was like, oh, there's hot plates. There's ways that we can get her coffee.
Yes.
That I don't have to sit out here, feel guilty and be paralyzed from doing the thing that I need to do. So talking about it with somebody who's a professional that can actually really hear you, you'll often solve your own problem.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of it is denial that I even have an issue. But what I always say to people is caregiving should be part of your life, but not your whole life. And that's the thing. I gave up everything when I was caring for my mom. And as a result, my house, it was the economy, the stock market crashed. I lost my job, but family caregivers do experience a 40% job loss. They have heart disease and high blood pressure at twice the national average. When you really look at that, that's unbelievable. And thirdly, I think the big one is addiction. Alcohol, drugs, things like that is absolutely on the rise in caregiving, because they're trying to cope. They're looking for outside things and they are stressing themselves out. So it's important to do that self-care and to find purpose. And we're going to talk about in the next segments a little bit more about occupational therapy, how to find purpose, and how to step forward in your life and make those changes in a positive light and not feel guilty. And everyone, Laurie and I will be right back right after this. We at Answers for Elders thank you for listening. Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.